husband, she attacked him with his own cane. Now, this would lead to him actually filing a restraining order against her. And this was like weeks after their marriage. She headed back to Michigan, and in July of 1976, that's where she was charged with assault and disturbing the peace for throwing a cue ball at a bartender's head. And then July of 1976, Eileen's brother, her older brother, he died of cancer. Now, he ended up leaving her $10,000 from his insurance money, so she was stoked. Now, Eileen would say that she used this $10,000 to pay off a fine that she had just gotten, and then she also got a car, but she blew all $10,000 within 2 months, and the car that she had purchased, she ended up wrecking it. That didn't last long. May of 1981, Eileen, she headed back to Florida, and when she was there, she actually decided to rob a convenience store. When she was there, she actually got $35 and 2 packs of a win, if you ask me. She gets caught, she's arrested, and she ends up doing a year in prison. January of 1986. Eileen, she ends up meeting a woman named Tyra Moore, and she meets her at a gay bar in Daytona Beach. Eileen said that like Tyra Moore, this young woman that she met, her and Eileen just had this like instant connection, and easily Tyra became the love of her life, which is romantic in a way. It's romantic, come on. So the two, they move in together. The relationship moves pretty quickly. Ty was working as a maid for a hotel. Eileen, she would support them financially with her earnings from her work. So trouble came a knockin', and accusations of assault were placed against Eileen. This was at, again, a bar. And Ty actually came forward and acted as a witness in her defense. Now, this would happen often. At first, Eileen, all of her crimes were everything but murder, right? She would rob small stores, she would rob people, she would beat people up, forge checks, anything just to kind of get her by. But, of course, that didn't last forever because Eileen then upgraded. And in 1989, that's when Eileen would go on to murder 7 men. And she did this within a 12-month period. The first victim that was found was a 51-year-old male. They saw that this victim had been shot several times, and there were 2 bullets that were found in his left lung, and those were what caused his death. But this victim was a convicted who Eileen claimed to have killed in self-defense. She would go on to say that she was doing her work. He would be a client of hers, and when they were alone together, that's when he tried to strangle her and rape her. So she went on to then kill him. On June 1st, 1990, the body of a 47-year-old man was found along Route 19 in Citrus County, Florida. Now, this victim, he was shot 6 times. Then they find another victim, 40-year-old man. Eileen, she ended up shooting him 9 times. He was found in Pasco County, Florida. And this victim was a little different. He was wrapped in an electric blanket, and his body was just badly decomposing. So witnesses ended up coming forward, and they said that they saw Eileen in possession of this man's car. So that's when this Eileen lady was now on the radar, okay? So Eileen's next victim was a 65-year-old merchant seaman. He devoted much of his time to Christian outreach ministry. Sadly, his body was found in Orange Springs, Florida. Eileen, after attacking and killing this victim, she took his car. There were witnesses who saw Eileen and Ty abandoning the car. Later on. And when police went and got the vehicle, they were able to get a palm print on the interior door handle, which linked Eileen to the the car. Sadly, though, that last victim, his body was never found. Another victim, he was 50 years old and worked as a sausage salesman, was reported missing in July of 1990, and his body would be found in August in a wooded area along State Road 19. Then another one of Eileen's victims was a retired U.S. Air Force major. He was a former child abuse investigator and a former chief of police. Been shot 6 times in the head and the torso. Eileen's last victim was a 62-year-old trucker, and his naked body was found near remote lodging road in Dixie County. He had been shot 4 times. Eileen and Ty, they're driving around in one of the previous victims' car. They stole it. And they end up getting into just a little car accident in front of somebody's home. Now, because of this, like, the people came outside, it worried Eileen and Ty. So Eileen and Ty, they end up just running off on foot. They tell the people, like, no, it's okay, like, we're fine, bye. So they call police, and then they give a brief description of what the people look like who crashed the car. And that's when police come on. They come on down because they knew, like, oh, these are the girls that we're looking for. They found more and more property which belonged to victims that were pawned at shops, and they were able to lift fingerprints off of some of the items, which again kind of led to Eileen. On January 9th, 1991, Eileen would go to a biker bar in Florida called The Last Resort. That's funny. Come on, that's funny. Police. It's funny. Come on, that's funny. Police were able to arrest her on an outstanding warrant. Eileen was alone, so they went looking for her girlfriend, Ty, who they ended up finding the next day in Pennsylvania. She was way out there. She made a run for it. They needed a confession, so who were they gonna call? Ty, not Ghostbusters. They're gonna call Ty, and they knew this because they could use Ty as leverage, pretty much, because what they did was they asked Ty, hey, can you please get a confession from Eileen in exchange for immunity? She would return to Florida with the police, and they placed her in a motel. They hooked up the phone. It's wired so that they could record everything that Ty is saying to Eileen. So then 3 days later, on January 16th, that's when they would finally get a confession from Eileen to Ty. Baby, she got it. So Eileen is arrested. She remains in prison. News, media, everyone's going a woman serial killer? First of all, what the you know, it was just mind-blowing. And she's lesbian. What? So it's just being covered everywhere. Eileen is this monster. She's awful. She did many interviews. A year later, though, Eileen would go on trial, and she would have numerous trials from January 1992 to November of 1992. She would have a trial for each known victim, and in the end, Eileen would receive 6 death sentences. In court, they actually were able to get Ty to come out and testify against her. Eileen was very upset by that. So Eileen would end up sitting in the Florida State Prison waiting for her execution. In 2001, there was a petition to the Florida Supreme Court, and she stated her intention to dismiss her legal counsel and terminate all pending appeals, saying, quote, I killed those men, I robbed them as cold as ice, and I do it again too. There's no chance in keeping me alive. Quote, I killed those men, I robbed them as cold as ice, and I do it again too. There's no chance in keeping me alive or anything because I'd kill again. I have hate crawling through my system. I am so sick of hearing that she's crazy stuff. I've been evaluated so many times. I'm competent, sane, and I'm trying to tell the truth. I'm one who seriously hates human life and would kill again, end quote. Those were her words. Her execution took place on October 9th, 2002. She declined her last meal and opted for a cup of coffee instead. Her last words were, quote, yes, I would like to just say I'm sailing with the rock and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus. June 6th, like the movie, big mothership and all, I'll be back, end quote. She sounds more like the Terminator, but July 6th. Is that Independence Day? Is she talking about the movie? Then she just died. Ramirez, aka The Night Stalker. Richard was one of 5 children, and his father was a former police officer. The whole family relocated to Texas. So his father would often physically abuse his wife and his children. At the age of 2, Richard was struck in the head with like a falling piece of furniture. And then when he was 5 years old, he was struck again in the head with a swing at school, and he was knocked unconscious. From that point on, he suffered from seizures. Richard's home life was pretty toxic. He would spend a lot of his time at his cousin's house. He was much older, and he had been an Army Green Beret combat veteran who served in the Vietnam War. Now, this cousin was all sorts of effed up. He even had photos of him posing with a severed head belonging to a woman that he had raped and killed. And Richard is like, whoa, that's cool. Because he's a kid. Like, whoa, that's cool. Because he's a kid. Miguel would end up teaching Richard some of the skills he had learned, including how to kill people. Good for 10-year-olds to know. On May 4th, 1973, Richard was at Miguel's home when Miguel and his wife got into an argument, and Miguel ended up shooting his wife in the face. Now, Richard was there, so he witnesses Miguel shooting. Now, Miguel would end up getting arrested and taken into prison, but he was found not guilty by reasons of insanity, and he would just spend 4 years in the state mental hospital. After the shooting, he really just didn't want to go home because it was not a good place to be. So he ends up moving in with his sister. This is just a one big hot mess of a family. His sister's husband, his name was Roberto. Roberto over here